Probably about one more minute before we get started.
I tell you what, Michael, since we're waiting on a few people, I'll give a reward to the people, those that care. Not everybody cares, but some people have asked. For those that joined early, a lot of you know from Summit, we announced that we're expecting our first son, and he should be born any day now. So we're expecting him. He'll be induced in 2 weeks if he doesn't come sooner. But here's our latest picture. We got this yesterday. It just blows my mind that one, it's that clear, but two, that he's in my wife's belly right now, and I get to hold him in my arms in a matter of days. So anyway, thanks for joining early. You get a little surprise
Sneak
there.
peek.
Sneak peek.
That's
So,
awesome. Congratulations to you guys.
thank you.
All right, everybody. And hello to our friends who have said hello. Really always appreciate that kind of a welcome. We're going to go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Michael Faulkner. I lead the solutions team, and joining me today in the place of Andrew Triplett is Chris Dolan, who is our very own head of product and strategy. Chris, welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, I guess you've already already said hello to everybody. All right, so before we get started, I'm going to take Andrew's role of going through just a little bit of housekeeping. So hopefully I do that as well as he does. As you know, the whole point here is with what's the point is at a high level, we're just asking the question, what's the point of a lot of the things that we do in church? Why do we take attendance? Why do we take notes? As ministers, why do we use texting features? Things like that. And we're talking about it more from a ministerial standpoint. And you usually hear me talk high level, and then Andrew will jump in and kind of tie it back to technology. Today, it's going to be a little bit more back and forth. We're just kind of treating it a little bit differently this month. But again, if you have any questions, as you can see here, please just click the Q&A icon, type your question in, and at the end, we will go through those questions together. Whatever we don't cover, we'll be sure that we reply as in a follow-up email. All right, as far as what we're going to cover today. So again, what we're covering is, of course, what's the point of year-end giving? And we're going to kind of start out with the current state. What is the current state? And as we all know, it's a year-end rush is what it really is. But then we're going to transition into what the future state of year-end giving could potentially look like. Then we'll talk about ways to biblically thank our givers and continue to motivate our givers. And then we'll wrap up with segmenting those givers. All right, so to begin with, again, just want to ask that high-level question, and forgive me if this just seems obvious to everybody else, because I think we all know the point, if you will, of year-end giving. It's to, it's so the first thing that comes to mind. Well, heck, Chris, help me out here, buddy. What is the point of year-end giving anyway? That was cheesy, but yeah, nice, thanks for everyone. I'm glad everyone's silenced so they can't throw tomatoes or anything.
It's a great question, and it's something, to be honest, we had a lot of debate on as we prepared this. And in an ideal situation, and I want to say in an ideal situation, we're not in a perfect world. We're obviously a broken world. That's the point of the church, right? Is to heal and redeem the brokenness. But in an ideal situation, we wouldn't have to talk about year-end giving, right? If our congregants' hearts are really changed in a way that giving is a spiritual act of worship, then they're giving on a continual basis, ideally as their money comes in, and you don't need to talk about it. But we all know the reality is that is not always the case in the church. It's an ideal, and it's something we want to be shooting for. And so on this call, we're actually going to be talking about not just year-end giving. We're going to be talking about best practices that you can implement throughout the year, because ideally, this is something, if you are needing to focus on this right now because you're behind in budget or the money hasn't been coming in 1/12 every month, which is the reality for a lot of churches, we want to help you get to a place where it's less of an issue. And that next year you're not having to think about year-end giving, and maybe year-end giving is more of a year-end budget update or a thank you to your donors. So we're going to be talking more about best practices that should be implemented throughout the year. But the reality is, for a number of reasons, and there are some legit reasons that, one that somebody has pointed out to me recently is like, there's some careers where maybe half of your income comes in at the end of the year because it's bonus driven, right? So in that case, maybe you do need to remind those people that, you know, just like throughout the rest of the year, their giving is important. That year-end bonus is important to consider as well. But you know, other reasons that maybe you know aren't as biblical or are harder to account for, like just pure procrastination, right? We are going to talk about some things in how you talk about year-end giving, but the main focus, I think, is really going to be on how do you implement some best practices so that we're not in a place that we have to talk about this each year. So yeah, does that answer your question there, Michael?
It does. I feel a little bit better equipped now to continue on. So no, I do appreciate that. So yeah, why don't we do that? Let's talk about some best practices, because really when you look at the reasons behind year-end giving, a lot of them can be addressed just by being a little bit more proactive. And you know, one thing that may not sound very appealing, because as you're coming up to the end of the year and you're pushing for that year-end giving, the idea of revisiting that in January is perhaps not necessarily appealing, but you kind of look at it as seeds that are being planted, if you will, for a smoother and quite frankly, just a more even giving structure for the church, which allows the church to be much more predictive in where it's going to invest its ministry. So to address it in January and to then maybe revisit in March and again in the fall and then again in obviously at the end of the year can be very impactful. I mean, look at it sort of like doing your pre-emergent in the fall and in the spring. When you lay down pre-emergent, you don't expect that in a year you're going to have perfect lawn. It's going to take 2 or 3 years. But when you go ahead and start those steps now of telling people, hey, it's going to be so much more effective to you and to the church if you can go ahead and set up things like recurring giving, if you will, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. It's just going to make it a lot easier for the church. And speaking of, if you can educate them on those reasons they might want to do it, that can really go a long way. It's one thing to be told what to do, but to be bought in to the reasons behind it really encourages action. So if we can show our congregants again in January and then each quarter how their generosity and how their gifts are impacting the church and impacting ministry, now all of a sudden they're bought in, right? My church, it was supporting an organization that was, quite frankly, freeing young women from sex trafficking overseas, and they, by really helping us understand the impact that we were making, it was so easy to get bought in, and it was quite frankly mind-blowing how much money was raised in a short amount of time because of how bought in everybody was to this. And then finally, just helping them understand the personal reasons why it could be helpful to them. It stresses us all out when we wait till the end of the year to do giving. And so if we can alleviate that stress, I mean, my goodness, the end of the year's got plenty of pressure as it is. It's going to make things a lot easier. So again, if we can talk to them about trying to set up recurring giving, it's going to make that year-end push a much easier process when it comes.
So if you're in a place where you are talking about year-end giving, we would encourage you to think about not only encouraging your congregants to make a one-time gift, but also to consider setting up recurring giving moving forward. And this is an example of a widget that everybody has available on their dashboard, their homepage, that you can turn on. It's super easy. There's some configuration in terms of like going in and making sure that the correct budget is set and the fund is correct, but you can even customize the color on this. And I would encourage you to turn this widget on if you don't already, because this is a number that you should be thinking about and measuring throughout the year. You shouldn't be waiting until November to think about what percentage of my budget is coming in through recurring giving. You should start in January, and every month you should be, as you encourage people to do recurring giving, this number should grow. One of the questions I often get whenever I talk about this is, what is a good percentage? I'm showing a widget here for 39%. When you turn this on, you might see that your church is closer to 20% or 25 or maybe even 15. The point is, don't be discouraged so much of where you start from. everybody's got to start somewhere. The point is you gotta start somewhere, and you gotta set a goal to grow. And so this widget will help you set goals and then measure whether you're actually growing, and set a goal like in 3 months, we want to grow this 3% or 5% or something. The more you're able to increase this, the easier it will be, and the more distributed your funds will come in throughout the year, and the less dependent you will be on that year-end giving source. So talking about making it easy. So we have some tools. Everybody's familiar with these special links. You can set up a special link. So you could search for people that maybe are giving sporadically, figure out how much they generally give. And you could even send a personalized email to them saying like, we've made it super easy for you to set up recurring giving, and make the case for why this is important, how it helps the church budget and plan and better steward the resources that are provided to them. And you can send a personalized link that then on the next slide you'll see actually opens up. Oh, you can put this into that email, and then on the third slide here, sorry, well, actually when you click on that link, we'll open up the giving page with all of that information pre-selected. So you can set the fund, you can set the dollar amount, the frequency, and then it's super easy. If they even have a payment method, all they have to do is then hit submit. So make the case for why this is important. Encourage your people to set up recurring giving. It's a really key thing that will help you not have to deal with this next year if you're dealing with it right now.
Yeah, and it's such a it's so important to do that on a regular basis. I actually met with a church a few months back, and they shared with me, we like to keep our congregants up to date once a quarter and let them know where things stand. And we're going to talk about that here a little bit more. But he said, by just keeping them informed, we typically see a push each time we let them know that. And part of that information is what Chris just talked about, is helping them understand how to set up recurring gifts. All right, so it's one thing to teach them again on how to do this easily, but now let's talk a little bit about how we're going to motivate our membership, our congregants, to in fact give, because ultimately we know that we as congregants, we as members, we want to know that when we are being obedient to Christ, when we are giving and tithing, that money is being spent on ministry. Right? It's not our money. This is God's money, but we want to know it's being spent on ministry, that's being spent to advance the kingdom of Jesus Christ. And so, or the gospel message of Jesus Christ, excuse me. So knowing that money is being dealt with in a good manner, that our leadership is being a good steward of that tithe is really helpful. So finding ways to show that to your membership and to your congregants, that's going to be very impactful. Right. And then letting them know where that money went and where it's going in the future. Again, kind of going back to that organization that we partnered with at my church. I mean, man, I haven't seen a church jump behind a cause as much as they did on that one. It was incredible. So to really show them where it's been, where it's spent, it really helps them realize, okay, I'm making a difference for the kingdom. I'm not just writing a check once a month or twice a month or however often that frequency is, right? And then again, talking about future gifts and the impact to ministry is so powerful. Being able to tie it to a number really matters. We see it all the time in commercials on TV. You see an SPCA commercial that talks about your gift of $5 a month is going to save this many pets or animals or whatever. Well, what if we did the same thing here? And quite frankly, in that group that organization that we were partnering with, they were able to say, hey, your gift of X dollars a month actually frees this many young girls from slavery. Man, you want to talk about having an impact. It was incredible. And then showing those pictures. So being able to really tie it to something versus just trying to guilt people into giving really, really makes a difference. And it's just evidenced by this survey that pastors.com came up with, where it was the 8 reasons, as you see, the believers will give to your church. And a couple, 3 of them that I highlighted were what we're talking about right now. People don't want to necessarily give to something you say you need. They want to be involved in your vision. They want to be involved in actually making a difference. And the reality is that people experience joy when they are involved, when they see that they're making an impact. You know, scripture tells us in 2 Corinthians 9, 6-7, that God loves a cheerful giver, right? Well, look, can we just be frank? Some of the most selfish people in the world are some of the most generous people in the world. And I say it kind of tongue in cheek, but the reality is when we give and we see the impact it makes, when we see the lives that are changed, the smiles that are on everybody's face, wow, I want more of that. And you know what? To a degree, that's kind of selfish, but it's a great selfishness. So really, really helping them again understand that. And then finally, just the last point I wanted to make here was, let's see here. Oh, what Chris was talking about, teaching them how to make it possible. So again, let's not just do it one time and say, hey, here's how you set up recurring giving. Do it throughout the year, 4 times a year, once a quarter. Teach them how to set up recurring giving, and you'll see that number go up.
Hey, Michael, one thing I don't see on that list, and I don't hear this from our partner churches, thankfully, but I've been in churches in the past where the message is often, help us, we're behind budget. Help us meet our year-end budget. Why, is that a compelling reason? Why? What do you think about that?
You're asking me about that? Oh, yeah. It goes back to what we were talking about a moment ago, is, trying to fish using bait that's called need. I need this. Well, sorry, man, maybe you should have planned ahead, right? And that's not what anyone's going to verbalize, but we're all human beings, and our hearts are going to be driven by what compels us. That's just, as you can see here, it's just not that compelling.
Yeah. I think like you said, it's like people don't want to give to fill a budget. They want to fill to advance ministry, right?
Exactly.
They want to give to have an impact, to change lives, to fill in the blank, whatever it is that your church is really passionate about, like building community, helping people engage in life-changing prayer, worship. People want to give towards that, not towards a budget hole, right?
Right. Yeah. Hey guys, we have a year-end push. We're a little behind our number. Here are the things we're trying to do next year with the budget that we laid out. Much more compelling argument there, or a compelling statement there.
Yeah.
A couple of other things that can be very helpful is sending out an email, or sending out, just a letter that is thanking your congregants and givers in a way that aligns with scripture. And what I mean by that is, we don't want to just point out the top givers in our church, because quite frankly, I'm not sure that even aligns with scripture. But if we can just say, you know what, we recognize that you are choosing to be obedient to Jesus Christ in your giving, and we want to thank you. And we also want you to know that you're making this kind of an impact. This example here is just talking about, you contributed to our Thanksgiving fund, and guess what? 50 families were fed because of that, and they heard the gospel of Jesus Christ in the process. Awesome. I'm going to give more, So that's one way, is again, motivating. But I talked also about just keeping the message in front of your congregants and members throughout the year can be impactful as well. In this email example, it's not, hey, here's the kind of impact you made, necessarily, as much as, this is where we as a church are against the goals that we have. Yes, we have this budget, but to Chris's point in the question he asked a moment ago, the budget is actually going toward these ministries. And here's how we're doing so far. And oh, by the way, here's where you are, just on the year, if you want to take a look at that. We're not going to tell you where you are on your goals, because you only know your goals, but it's a great way to remind people, I've perhaps slipped a little bit, or, I thought I tithed last month, but I didn't, or whatever. But by sending out these periodic reminders, you do see a little bit of a bump after that. All right, Chris, you want to take segmenting givers?
Yeah, and if you've been on a webinar with me, you probably heard me. This is a soapbox I like to get on, and it really drives to the importance of knowing your people, number one, and two, being able to communicate to them through the same channel that you know them. So some people use external tools for some of the communications, and the thing that's lacking with that is to easily segment your messaging to those people. If you communicate within TouchPoint, then you can send different messages to different people. And you've probably heard me say this before. Good communication is sending the right message to the right person. And so here's an example here. This is one way that you can segment people. There's a lot of things that we actually know about people, and I'll give some examples here in a minute. But one thing that you know is, are they a cash or non-giver? And notice those are in the same category. Like, just because somebody has no giving recorded in TouchPoint doesn't mean they actually haven't given. They could be giving very sacrificially via cash. So we need to be careful about the way we communicate that. And we might message those people differently. Offline givers, encouraging them to move to online where it's easier. Online sporadic givers, people that maybe just make one big year-end gift, or then you have online recurring givers. So those are 4 different buckets. And we'll talk about different other ways of categorizing this, but the point is you want to communicate to these people, to your people, differently based on what you know about them. There's one church that I was working with that actually used to send one kind of giving email, and their calls to action significantly increased when they actually started sending more specific communications to people based on what you know about them. And so you can use tools like status flags to break people into different buckets and categorize them. You can send different messages and different calls to action. For example, like the person who's giving with recurring giving, maybe you just want to send an email to them at the end of the year and say, thank you for giving consistently. This helps us really plan and better steward our money. Can you just look at your recurring giving and make sure that it's in line with your goals? But thank you. Maybe send them a nice resource, like a free digital download of something, right? That person is going to feel valued, appreciated, understood, known, versus if they get the blanket email that just says, we need this year-end gift, right? Like, that person doesn't feel like you don't know them, versus the other people, you want to send different messages. So on the next slide, here's some other examples of ways that you can actually segment. So giving patterns, that's what I was using on the last slide, but based on their involvements, right? So you might want to tailor the communication to people that have kids, people that are involved in community groups, people that are involved like volunteers, and tie that to what they're doing and how their gift impacts the ministries that they're involved in. Maybe stage of life, right? People in different stages of life have different abilities to give or be more generous in some stages. So you might want to think about that and tailor that message based on what you know about them. And we know a lot about the people, so we should be communicating messages that are much more personal and much more specific. And I think you'll see much higher calls to action as a result. So here's an example. So this is sent to somebody that already has recurring contributions. So instead of asking for more, like, we're just saying, because we're telling them the impact that their recurring gift has had, and we give them a link to manage their recurring giving if they want to make changes, but it's just a thank you, right? That's one example. If you were a recurring giver and you got this versus a message that was just asking for more money, wouldn't you feel better connected, better known, better cared about by your church? So this is just one example, but and this is the other thing I want to say. Some people get overwhelmed by this because they say, oh my gosh, so I usually send one email and now I got to break this into 20. And I'm like, no. Start small and take baby steps. So if you're sending one email today, try to set a goal to maybe break that group into 4 this year and see where that goes. And then maybe the next year you could break that 4 into 8. So there's lots of different ways. You can even do like some A/B testing and set like on messaging, right? Like you could say this group of people is really big, and I'm gonna tailor the message different to half of those people. And the way you do this is you'd run searches, you'd use tags, we can talk through if you have questions about how to do this specifically in TouchPoint, but you have the search builder tool. So you can say, who are the people on my mailing list that meet these criteria, right? And you can tag and break them up, and you can see like what is the response rate and what's more effective to actually, encourage and get people to respond. So
thanks, Chris. So, at a high level, when we look at takeaways, I'm actually going to kind of go off script for just a moment, because if you're looking for just one reason that anybody should be encouraged or motivated to get involved in recurring giving, whether that's a staff member, a lay leader, or a congregant or member at the church, it's the same reason that we have to plan and budget within any organization, whether it's a church or a business. If we want to grow, if we want to get into certain markets, we have to understand what our revenue stream is going to be in the future so that we can make investments. If we want to hire somebody next year that runs a particular ministry, we have to know that that money is going to be there. Recurring giving is going to give us that confidence and that stability, if you will, to be able to go ahead and make those purchases, to make those investments without worrying about whether or not that money is going to be coming in. So that would be kind of a high level. Some of the key things that we talked about today. Obviously segmentation can be so incredibly powerful, right? And Chris, you did a great job on talking through that. And actually, we got a lot of feedback from some of the attendees just saying, that's a good point. That's really insightful to be able to give much more precise messaging to people. And then just thinking about your message, encouraging recurring giving. One of the things that came up in the Q&A was around when should we do the recurring giving? Should it be the pastor talking in a sermon? Should it be during announcements? Should it be emails? Should it be during Sunday school or small groups? And I think that it's just going to vary from church to church, and quite frankly, probably from denomination to denomination. If I were sitting in the sanctuary and I was receiving if I was going to be more open to a message like that, it would be during the announcements where they're just saying, and maybe once a quarter, hey guys, by the way, if you're not aware of this, we have a system that allows your giving to be so much easier than it has been. If you spent this much time this morning trying to tithe or write a check or whatever, we can fix that for you. And it's through this, maybe, they text a number that provides a link that has a video with a short instruction. That's just one suggestion, but I do think announcements are probably the best way to do that. But again, it's really going to vary from church to church. And I'm curious, Chris, if you have any additional insight on that. You're on mute, by the way.
Sorry, I muted myself. Yeah. One thing I would add is, I would start with your most invested people. Don't stop there, but start there, right? So if you have an elder board, a vestry, a session, your diaconate, those are the people that have really committed, right? They have made vows. Some in some denominations, they're actually ordained. These are people that are really committed. Like if they're not setting up recurring giving, then we've got a problem first, right? The next level, membership, right? These are people that are saying, I'm committing to your church. You're usually taking membership vows of some sort. I think it's appropriate to hold them to a higher standard. Now, I think it's important to say we want to be careful not to be legalistic and require certain things, but I think I would start with some of those more committed groups and talk about how important this is. As an invested member of the church, as a leader of the church, if you're a Sunday school leader or volunteer, things like that, thank you for that. But it's not just being a member. Membership includes, so much. And a piece of that is giving, is part of your giving. It's a spiritual act. And so, starting and holding those people to a little bit of a higher standard, I think is a key thing. And then when you're talking about it from the pulpit, you can even say we talk about this and the importance of this in our membership classes or with our leaders, and our leaders have a very high percentage of people that do recurring giving. And that sets an example or a bar for the attendees and the people that aren't as committed, that are sitting there in the pews, to step up and follow that leadership of the lay leaders that are carrying a lot of the weight there. So that's one place I would encourage you to start. it's something I mentioned. So now Michael,
I'm
you're
on
on
mute.
mute.
Yeah, sorry. For those who don't know, we all did a t-shirt design in 2020, and everyone took suggestions on what should be the theme of our t-shirt, and we ended up with "You're on mute." So yeah, that's become quite the joke. Probably not just in our organization. But yeah, we have a few minutes left for questions and answers. So please, if you haven't already, feel free to jump in. We've got a few questions that have already popped up that I'll run by you, Chris. So let's see here. One is, do I need to be doing anything special for year end at all? I think that's probably maybe just a high level joke there. But is there anything that you would throw in there?
I'd probably say what I said at the beginning. In an ideal situation, hopefully no, right?
Yeah.
Other than I love the idea of quarterly giving updates that you touched on. And I think it is important to give it. So if you're in a good place and you're not like really hurting and waiting for all that year-end giving to come in, I would say, quarterly giving updates, and one in November or early December that says, this is where we are to date, right? Like for our giving, this is where we are with our expenses. This is how we've stewarded the sacrificial money that you as our congregants have given us. We're giving you that update. We would ask that you look at your own finances and do the same thing. So is it necessary? It depends on where you are as a church. Ideally, no, it wouldn't be necessary, but at bare minimum, I think regular updates like you mentioned, Michael, are such an important thing. So yeah, I would strongly encourage that.
Great. Thank
I
you.
got a question I'll throw to you here that came in. Should you mention tax advantages of giving?
That's funny because I was actually going to ask a friend of mine who's a pastor. You're not supposed to let your right hand know what your left hand's doing. I was like, dang. So, am I supposed to be benefiting from the tax advantage? That, frankly, I think that is a hard issue. It really is for individuals. Would I do it from the pulpit? I really don't know. I don't have an answer in my own life. That's almost down like, should you tithe on the gross or the net? And I've heard pastors say, well, do you want to be blessed on the gross or on the net? It's a great question. And really, I don't know what the right answer is. There's clearly a tax advantage. Jesus says, give to Caesar what is Caesar's. And so if we're giving to Caesar what is Caesar's, and there's a benefit from that, great. Should that be driving what we're doing? No. Should it be mentioned? I really don't know. I think that's going to be a hard issue for each church to deal with.
Well, and one thought I have is, if you're segmenting and you're communicating different to those people that are cash or non-givers, you might want to say like, maybe you're giving in cash right now. And if you either put that cash in an envelope, or if you give online, there are tax advantages to it, right? I mean, it shouldn't be the reason why they give. We want them to give because their heart has changed and they want to see ministry impacted, right? But we know we're in this broken world, and sometimes it might be that extra push that gets them over the edge to mention that. It might be a reason to at least move somebody from kind of an offline unknown giver to an online where they're known, where they can get that tax statement. Sure. Somebody did say, what's the best way to be sure everyone gets their year-end statement? And unfortunately, I don't know which church this person's from, but I think the best thing to do, and even when I would do these quarterly giving updates, I would pull out your mobile device and say, we have a mobile device, we have a mobile app for our church that is super easy to log into. You just put your phone number, your email address in, it texts you a code. And in that, you can see your giving statement. You can see a summary of this year's giving, last year's giving. You can see the details of all of that. You can set up recurring giving all right there in the device, and it's super easy. And so, I think that's the easiest way to get statements out. And I know I've seen churches save hundreds, if not thousands of dollars by actually just telling people, go to your mobile app and get your statement. We're not going to send paper statements anymore unless you specifically opt in for it, because it's expensive. It's time consuming for our staff to mail those out. But maybe they send an email that says your giving statement is available and it's up to date, even though technically it's available and up to date immediately in TouchPoint all the time. So if I make a gift right now, 10 seconds later, it's updated in the mobile app, and I can download a statement, which is really just super powerful and easy for them. So yeah, that's how I would encourage people to get their statements. Saves them a lot of time, saves the church hassle and headache too.
Saves the finance department a lot of headache. Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, so we are getting close to the end of our time together, and again, want to thank everyone. I also want to make a quick announcement. So next month, for the month of December, we are actually entertaining a different approach. Not a different approach that'll be ongoing. We're just, for the month of December, we're going to do something a little different than our normal I'm thinking of a friend's thing that he calls Ask Jeff, or What's the Point? And so stay tuned. Just keep your eye on your email. We'll let you know what that's going to look like. But for the month of December, we will not be doing your traditional What's the Point? All right. Well, guys, I appreciate you joining us today. If there are any other questions, feel free to keep them coming, and we will reply through email to those that did not get answered. All right, Chris, anything you want to finish with?
No, thanks for joining. Have a great Thanksgiving, everyone.
All right. Y'all take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.